Thank you very much for coming on. Let's start with a little bit about you. How did you get started in this whole YouTuber thing?
Well, I was doing a course. I was doing a degree in TV production, um, sort of learning how to edit, shoot, and put together stuff. And it was kind of like the summer break, and I kind of thought, well, I need something to like while away the time and practice like what I'd learnt. And so that was kind of just how I got into it. I mean, I'd already done like various little things online, like on message boards and that, with like old games. And yeah, I just kind of started it. I thought there's not much at the time, what, 2012, there wasn't that much like Sega stuff or like Amiga stuff compared to like Nintendo video wise. So that was kind of how I got into it, and it just kind of went from there. Just started as a hobby, really.
So you saw that there was just that open space where no one
Yeah,
was talking about Spectrum games and everything else.
no,
Everything was
not.
so
I mean,
Nintendo focused for
it
some
was.
reason.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of both. It was very Nintendo focused. I mean, there was not that there wasn't Spectrum stuff, of course, but not in terms of like edited reviews. And also, I mean, that was still the time when a lot of people were kind of trying to take off Angry Video Game Nerd. So you still got a lot of kind of those reviews like, rah, rah, this game sucks, duck balls or whatever. And I always kind of wanted to be a bit more positive and talk about games that I liked as opposed to just crapping on things. So yeah, that's kind of how I started reviewing.
So you're not like us American games reviewers where we just look at everything and everything's shit all the time.
No, yeah, no, nothing like that. I mean, not like I haven't covered bad games, but I just kind of I get more like curious as opposed to just I don't know. I can't think of like compound swearing on them.
Um, As in terms of like having to put everything together and doing an episode, what is your process for doing that? How do you select a game and then do your research and then put it all together as a finished product?
In terms of subjects, I mean, I have like a few like documents around of like various ideas I've thought up, but they often tend to be like I put them all in a document and then never actually look at it again. So I kind of think of something on the fly or something gets requested. If it's like an interesting subject, I'll try and have a look at like sources from the time. Like I try and look in old games magazines or newspapers or interviews with the people who were around. Like say if I'm doing like a games company documentary, I'd kind of have a look at all of that first and then try and write something. And depending on the subject, depending on how much research is needed. I mean, it can take quite a long time, and sometimes you end up like really trying to search it, like actually trying to get in touch with like the people involved as well and
Is
see
it
what they have to say.
is it a bit tasking sometimes to get something done?
It can be, yeah, especially depending. I mean, because sometimes, I mean, the way it is, I mean, there's this piece of footage like somewhere, but it's not on like public video sharing sites. And as a YouTuber, it's not like your company just have enough money to go to like say BBC and say, oh, there's this thing in your archives that's 30 years old. Can I have it, please? And just pay for it. So that can be a kind of taxing thing sometimes.
The gameplay that you do show, do you do that via emulation or via the actual hardware?
It's differed from time to time. I mean, emulation's easiest. Just, I mean, it's so much easier to capture that way. But I do have the facility for real capture. I mean, if I can do real capture, if that's the best way to do things, then that's what I like to do. But sometimes, especially with certain games, I mean, I don't have them immediately all to hand. I mean, EverDrives are very useful in that regard. Like just having like a Mega Drive and SNES EverDrives makes it pretty easy to capture anything from there. But I mean, it all depends. Certainly, when I started, emulation was the thing, but I try to make it weird if I can.
Uh, the first video I saw of yours was the Jimmy Savile uh,
Oh,
store game,
yeah,
whatever the actual title of it was. Um,
see which one.
some of the subject matter that goes along with these games is kind of depressing in a way.
Yeah.
Jimmy Savile especially. But
Yep.
what has been one of the games that has been the hardest hitting for you? That's kind of taken its toll on your soul, if you will.
There's been a few. That was definitely one of them. I'm kind of surprised. I mean, I knew obviously, right, that's a game that was on Jim will fix it, and I didn't quite expect that to be such a downer as it was. No, I mean, not that that was intentionally a downer, but just an incredibly mundane, horrible game. Others that I guess more personal. I did a game called Lost Patrol not too long back, which is it's one of those games that, I mean, a lot of it is just on a single map screen, but it's about like a Vietnam War group that gets lost behind enemy lines, and they've got to try and make it back to camp. And I kind of constructed the review as like a story of the plane, and in the end, going war, everybody died. So kind of doing stuff like the game. You think like
Breaking up a little bit, Kim.
oh,
There's a pop on.
my phone.
There we go. Okay. Um, let's see. We got the depressing one out of the way.
Yeah.
So what's been your favorite one to do?
Ooh, my favourite game. There's been some big games. I mean, Final Fantasy VII, doing a big 7-part that. But I think, well, as opposed to like specific games, I mean, there's been sort of big projects that I've done in the past, doing like an A to Z on licensed games, like covering just all like good, bad, weird, otherwise interesting like movie, television tie-ins was one of my favourite things. A lot of the company documentaries as well, covering people like Signosis and Ocean Software. Because again, it wasn't stuff that when I started YouTube, it was really talked about that much, actually going into the sometimes quite colourful history of the people and the companies behind these games. Sort of all the tales of excess that there are from back those times. It's been one of my favourite things to cover.
It seems like the only times I can actually find in-depth coverage is by you and Dan and Larry are the only ones that truly covered in detail. I'm not sure if it's a thing here where we just don't, or the YouTubers on our side just don't have the time to make documentaries like that,
I
or
think
we
there's
just don't care
yeah,
for it, or what. I don't know what the.
I think as time's gone on, there's been a few more that have cropped up, or people have kind of introduced that to stuff they do. Like I think LGR's done that sometimes with his Tech Tales series, plus the UK tubers, guys like Nostalgia Nerd. I mean, when I started, there wasn't really that many people at all doing that sort of thing. I think Gaming Historian was around then, back when I started. But and I mean that wasn't what I intended. I just intended to like review games. It was only a few years in that I really started doing like documentaries and going behind the scenes.
I think it's kind of paved a way for a better part of YouTube. The filmmaker part of YouTube that really needed to evolve, and I think you all were a part of that, which
Yeah,
has made watching YouTube a lot more enjoyable for me.
definitely. I mean now YouTube's a lot of people who make, or at least it's a bit more geared towards people who make longer videos,
Hmm.
and as well as services like Patreon as well coming up in the past few years. That's been quite helpful to people to make that sort of long form content. It doesn't just have to be, you know, back in the day it used to be everything has to be 10 minutes was the common advice, which just doesn't apply at all now.
As far as how YouTube handles videos with copyrighted content, have you seen any sort of uphill battle with keeping your stuff monetized or anything like that?
Well, certainly with some videos. I mean, one other thing I like to do wrestling content. Um, and there's a video that I did about WCW and New Japan put on a show in North Korea,
Hmm.
which was the biggest wrestling supercard ever. I mean, the attendance wasn't legit really because they had to attend, but it was like 180,000 people or something attended every single day. But in trying to review that card, I found out, oh, actually, like the whole thing's just WWE just claimed it and claimed it and claimed it, and in the end, I virtually had to ruin the video to get it up, and it wasn't worth it. So yeah, sometimes with stuff like that, it's a pain in the ass, especially when you're not trying to steal the bloody document, the video. You're just trying to talk about it.
Have you found that magical balance of just the right amount of video to the right amount of original content to keep you in that out of that weird gray area?
Yeah, I try to find that balance. I mean, it helps sometimes when old games as opposed to movies or whatever. But if I ever, I mean, but sometimes if I use a clip from a movie, I know it's like how long it kind of needs to be or how short it needs to be in order to prevent that from screwing me over later on. I use like the whole like film music and like
Breaking up a little bit again.
bloody microphone. I'm sorry.
Not a problem. That's what editing's for. um, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is representation in video games, which seems to be the big thing that everyone talks about right now. It infests my inbox. It's everything anyone wants to talk about whenever I'm on a movie set. Um, what are your opinions on representation in video games? Do you feel that we're making strives uh, to appease everyone, or is there so much more that has to be done to represent uh, all parts of society?
Um, it's one of those issues that certainly I use to feel a lot stronger. Kind of as I get older, I get less political. But I definitely think there's got to be some sort of kind of balance. I suppose it's an area that can get quite confrontational at times. Like it really end up just causing terrible feeling on all sides. And I do get why like the state of things can annoy some people. But one thing that I also find like with being who I am is sometimes the things that people do in order to like make or try to make representation better end up being almost restricting things that were there before. Do you know what I mean? It's like I don't know. It's like if say random example. So, you remember that Jack Whitehall a few weeks ago?
Hmm.
Disney got in trouble for casting him in a homosexual role,
Yes.
and it's like, well, that's all well and good, but you're kind of also saying by the way that they went about it that people like us we can only play queer roles. Like,
Hmm.
why couldn't we play a straight role? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
If you want to
it's kind of like doing
pigeonhole,
the most as
mhm.
opposed to the best.
If we try to pigeonhole people by exactly who they are in the real world,
Yeah.
then uh, you're you're basically going to create a space where you can only say someone with this life experience can only play this person. Well, how many murderers, how many rapists, how many psychopaths are you going to find that work in Hollywood? Well, you'll probably find it quite a bit, but how many are you going to find
No comment.
that are going to
Um,
perfectly fit that role you've written, or do you have to rewrite an entire script just so you can, because you already have this ideal actor that you need, so you have to rewrite the entire script just to perfectly resemble that person. So
mm,
actors no longer become actors, they become biographers.
it's true. I mean, there is a balance that needs to be struck. In the end, I think every film kind of has its own set of needs.
Hmm.
I mean, there are some times when you see something that's like the Scarlett Johansson thing from like a couple of months back, and I don't know. I mean, a couple of years ago, I mean, again, it used to get me more annoyed. Now I kind of look at it as like I find it funny more than anything. It's just like Scarlett Johansson plays trans man, and it's just like okay, but it's like cool. Right.
I,
We'll
I
see
can
how that.
see I can see the name I can see the name getting butts in seats, but
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
can't see her playing that role because I haven't seen her in anything that I've taken her like totally seriously as a dramatic actress in. I don't think ever.
been a while. She's done mostly action stuff lately.
Yeah,
I remember in Ghost World. That's going back a while.
I remember that's the first time I saw her too.
Those are really good.
Yeah, it's one of those rare films that I think still holds 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
I love that film. Whatever happened to Flora Birch?
Uh,
That was an asshole, if I remember correctly. Like, really possessive.
the last time I saw her, she was in a direct-to-DVD movie I had to review back in 2007, where she played a mortician's assistant.
Wow.
And the only thing I can remember about that movie is she had to snap a dead guy's cock in half because he died with an erection.
Lovely.
That's all I remember of that movie. And that was the last time I saw her in anything that came across my.
That's going to stick in your mind, isn't it?
Sadly, they didn't show it. They just kind of like show her hands just off screen snapping it,
and have a nice little Foley effect.
Yeah, it was like a stalk of celery just getting split in half.
Yeah.
And that was the last of her I ever saw.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to speak speak well on representation because I'm just a straight white guy who happens to work in the entertainment industry. So I hear a lot about it with other journalists I'm with seem to bring it up quite a bit, either intersectionality or feminism or representation. And it's just hard for me to have a dialogue with anyone because I don't have those experiences.
No, of course. I think I mean, it's one of those things. It's one of the subjects like now, like, and I think I have to tread on eggshells a bit sometimes, because I kind of think that, you know, everyone's like opinions, like, well, not everyone's, but a lot more people perhaps than people think have certain validity. Like, not everyone is a complete chud, so to speak. That, you know, like, with a lot of people, I mean, I've always found, like, in the stuff that I do outside of YouTube in real life, you know, once you reach kind of a bit of an understanding, like, some people may not be able to understand exactly, like, where you're coming from, but they know, they empathize, and it's all good. Whereas it's not just, like, black and white. I mean, that's kind of what I've always found, like, in my personal relationships with people. And that kind of put me in good stead. I always found it made sure that I didn't have to give up everything when I did the old switcheroo.
So, in your experiences, when you show people respect, do you find that they show you the equal amount of respect, at least to your face?
At least to my face, and what people say in private is I don't care. I mean, if someone doesn't show me any respect whatsoever, and it's clear that that's not going to change, then fine, you know, I'm not going to let you affect my life anymore. But you know, most people, you know, you find something. Most people, I mean, we live in an age kind of now where, you know, it is more. I mean, again, if it's not, people don't understand exactly, it's more accepting, and generally people are like, hey, it's all good with me, you know. They don't let it affect their lives to a degree.
Yeah, I don't see how, like, your decision or anyone else's decision, if it doesn't affect me in any sort of negative way, I don't see what the issue is.
Yeah.
But what I've seen on the opposite end of that is there are some people that are so rife with making sure that that I know my place as just a straight white guy, that it becomes hard for me to do my job. And I think that might be where some of the disrespect eventually comes out from, is like, I'm just trying to do my job, but you're saying I can't do my job well enough because of who I am. And
I mean, again, I mean, I can only speak to my own experience. I mean, there's obviously, I mean, I live in the UK. I mean, I can't speak to someone's experience in Africa or even in America, in the inner cities of America. I can't speak to all of that, but I just social media is just one of those things that just gets everything gets reduced to a certain level. I mean, it's kind of brought us closer together, but it's also kind of apart and try. I kind, which it can be kind of frustrating to see sometimes. I mean, back when I was I used to be like kind of big like social justice warrior type thing, but in the end, I kind of realised it wasn't really helping my actual life so much.
Mm-hmm.
Like actual like quality of my interactions with people was really hurting, and so I kind of felt things had to change for me, at least.
Do you feel that we're getting at least on the right track to accept one another in both in private lives and also in the professional sector too? Or is
I think things are improving.
okay?
I mean,
'Cause
I think,
I think
yeah.
you like the the social climate in Britain is somewhat different to the way it is in America.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
definitely.
I don't know if it's better or worse, but I know it's definitely different.
Mm. In the big picture, I mean, for all arguments and so forth that happen on Twitter and all that, I do think generally things are slowly improving, just as you know the nature of these things go. I mean, if I look back at how trans people were treated in media in life 20 years ago, even like it's way different to now. Like 20 years ago, trans people were little more than the butt of a joke, like
Hmm.
barely existed, very much on like the utter fringe of society. And now 20 years have passed. I mean, things are not perfect, far from it, like
Hmm.
especially not in certain other countries and what have you, but um, in places where we are, like the experiences that we can speak of, things have got better over the years.
I think the more that we become accepting and we see the representation more and more, the more we become accepting of it. Because I can think back to when I was in high school in the '90s, the uh, the representation for gay people was so limited,
Mm,
and that made it easier for you to ostracize someone, even your friends. My friend Charlie was still in the closet until our senior year, but we hounded him and made fun of him because we knew he was gay and he just didn't come out. But looking back, like we said some horrible things that I would never say now, but
yeah,
that's because it was so easily accepted.
mm,
Um,
that's what it's like. I mean, especially like adolescence, 20
mhm.
years ago. I
Yeah,
mean,
because there's the outsider, and so it's easy to pick on the outsider. But now that's no longer the case. But I didn't know anyone that was trans, so I don't even know how I would have approached that situation in a climate that was even more against the trans population than it was against homosexuals in the '90s. It's I don't know how I probably would have said even worse things.
I
Um,
mean, being the age I am, I can't imagine like transitioning in the school environment like
mhm,
late 90s, early 2000s. I can't imagine it would have been horrible. I mean,
mhm.
sure, it's. I mean, now we live in an age where people are often able to do this thing younger and it gets a lot better. But back in my day, I mean, it just wouldn't. It would not have gone well. It really wouldn't have.
I can only imagine how difficult that is to make that kind of life change when society looks at you in such a negative light.
Yeah.
I I couldn't imagine what that's like. That's absolutely just horrible to think of. And well, I know like my actions back then were wrong, but I'm not going to feel totally ashamed for acting the way I did. But I can recognize that that was just not what to do. And then
There are things
raising
you
my
learn.
daughter,
Yeah.
it's like you, no matter what, you have to be accepting of people.
I mean, I was horrible. I mean, I was sure I was a little shit myself. There's some who I can be. I mean, it's these things you learn from. And I look back at those days when, and I think about my interactions with some people. And I think, Jesus, that could be better. But when you're like 15, 14, you're far from a complete person at that time. So you make those mistakes, and
Hmm.
a lot of people learn from them. Some people don't. A lot of actually do.
What was uh, what was your support for going through and transitioning? What did you have there as your rock to help you through that?
Friends mostly. I had
Hmm.
built a kind of good support network around me, and sort of like kind of slowly but surely, I kind of introduced until I finally had to just mention, right, it's time to do it. And it was hard at first, like with like general people, like acquaintances and that, it was tough. There were tough times, which it's kind of like at first, like you don't expect that there's going to be a thing. Oh, and then a certain reality does kick in. I mean, a few years down the road now, things are cool. It comes with kind of comes with experience. Mm. Certainly early on, it can be, because I mean, well, it's like going through a second puberty in many ways, and with a lot of that come with it, because you're in a sense, and again, this sounds, but in a sense, you kind of have to learn like how to fit into society all over again. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? In like a totally different way to what you've been brought up with, and that in the long term it's going to be better, but it's tough to get there.
Have you noticed any different ways that society treats you before and after your transition? Did you see any like kind of stereotypes that people would apply to you in one instance that they don't now?
Get stared at a lot more. That happens. I
mean, you are a pretty woman.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you get that happen. I think things do change, but they change for yourself as well. Like, I'm a lot more confident of a person now than I was when I was presenting as male. And it shows. I mean, that a lot of people know me, like, commented on how that kind of changed over the years. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not afraid to. I used to be a very timid sort of person, which kind of isn't really the case anymore. So a lot of like your personality traits kind of switch up. So yeah, I mean, kind of the way that some can treat. I mean, sometimes you can tell if there's a bit of awkwardness, but most of the time, unless it's like outright hostility, it's like just let it slide. I mean, online as well. I mean, obviously, you get plenty of comments sometimes saying, tranny list, whatever. I've always kind of figured. I mean, I've always had to deal with shit online from that various things, and I just kind of feel like with trolls, it's like trolls will, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, all that, they'll always find something to pick at. So that's kind of how I deal with like trolling comments, like online hate, anything like that. So that if I do it that way, then it doesn't affect me.
What would be your advice for the younger generation that's coming into their own and understanding who they want to be or who they need to be to survive? What would be your advice to them?
My advice would be for trans people or like LGBT people. My advice would be try to get into a position. Your ultimate goal should be to get into a position where it's not like being trans or being LGBT is your whole identity. Like, as people, we are so much more now. Of course, yeah, we're trans, we're queer, we're all of that, but we also have our interests. I mean, I never wanted to like make when it all happened. I didn't want to make my YouTube channel. I still wanted to do all the things that I did before. I didn't want to suddenly just turn into like a trans channel talking about nothing but trans issues. I mean, I've done a couple of videos and that, but not much more. Because in the end, being trans is something. I mean, I kind of think I'm a person who happens to be trans. Like my first thing is not like, oh, as a trans woman, as this, as a trans woman, that. It's kind of like, as a woman, this, as a woman, that.
Judge you by your character, not by your.
Not by my
whatever label or.
Not by labels. Yeah, that's what I would say.
For people that want to find out more about you and see your content and contribute so you can continue to do what you do without having to worry about algorithms and whatnot, where can they find you?
Well, my YouTube channel is Kim Justice. If you just search Kim Justice, I'll be there. I'm very active on Patreon, Patreon/Kimball Justice. my thing there. I do put a lot of behind the scenes stuff, exclusive access, requests, all other sorts of things. I'm active mostly on Twitter as far as social networks go. You can find me at Kim XXX Justice. Don't worry, there's nothing porny on there. You won't see my dick. It's just that's XXX is just there. um, shit. And yeah, and I do stream and I Twitch stream sometime.
Oh, yeah. I'm seeing enough dicks on Twitter lately, anyway. So the shit posting is now just dick pics and Bowser dick pics and just.
Oh God, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I've seen that, and it's like, get it off my, get it off my feed. No.
um, what are the next projects that you have coming up?
I've got a few things kind of. I'm trying to put together various big projects. My next kind of big games company documentary is going to be on Sensible Software, and I'm trying to get up to interview John Hare at some point, who was like the big guy behind there. He's currently in Cologne doing Gamescom, so busy time for everyone in the gaming world. Aside from that, I don't know. I don't really keep much of a schedule. It's kind of like whatever comes to mind. I mean, I'm sitting here. It's Monday, and I'm kind of thinking like I put a video out today, and I'm still kind of thinking, what am I going to put out next Monday? I'm quite unorganized like that. So yeah, it's all a bit of a mystery. But I have other like kind of major projects that I do work on. Currently doing a series about my hometown, Southend, about like the old arcade scene and entertainment scene, like in an old coastal town that's sort of known for those things. Trying to put an old computer back together, trying to get contacts like that. I have all these little kind of things that come up and then down, and I just do different things all the time. I can never just say, oh yeah, I've got this, and this, and this. Some people can, and I envy them for being organised. That's just not me.
You just prefer to fly by the seat of your pants?
Yeah, that tends to work. I just luck into.